A big thank you comes to you today from Dead Rabbit via Patreon for his long support of the channel. Zhulodok versus Olvika, God Eternal Kefnet, and Marquesa. And I just played a game where I only had 2 lands by turn 6 and kept spinning Sensei's Divining Top, hoping to see a land, and couldn't. So while this isn't an incredible start, it's better than the last one. So I think we keep here. Field of the Dead, not as good with a bunch of wastes in hand either, but not exactly reliant on that in this deck. Just a little bonus for us. Wayfarer's Bauble for the blue player. The mono blue player, I just noticed we're up against 3 blue players actually, which should prove interesting. Snap. Another Wayfarer's Bauble from the Olvika. And there we see an All Is Dust. There's every chance that we draw into big things in this deck because it's ram full of them, so start off with the tap land, likely going in for Liquid Metal Torque next turn. Marquesa playing a Personal Tutor to put a card on top, and showing us with that a Time Warp for an extra turn. Wayfarer's Bauble cracked by Kefnet, and we draw into a War Room, which helps towards the Field of the Dead, so just play that out into the Torque like we said. The Wayfarer's Bauble was cracked over here as well, by the way. And the first commander is Kefnet hitting the field on turn 3. And both these blue players just passing through the turn with blue mana held up, unfortunately. There is a Realm Breaker, the Invasion Tree, which we're not going to be able to activate here, unfortunately, so probably do it next turn. Get down the Unstable Obelisk here. Now the Grixis player drops a Bloody Betrayal, so gaining control of a creature, and they send in the Kefnet towards us, and they've made a blood token in the process. And then sacrificing the commander to Village Rites, so drawing 2 cards for that. See if it ends up in our opponent's library, 3 cards from the top. Instead deciding to put it in the command zone there. So may well want to consider shuffling the library over the next few turns. And now it's a Drawn from Dreams for some more card draw for the mono blue player. Then managing to make a land off that and follow up with a Serum Visions, so they'll have to discard down to hand size here. A very nice sack outlet for Olvika, and most decks that can run it, a Goblin Bombardment. Looks like he might be missing a land though, which is not the thing Olvika wants to see. Alright, so we've got a couple of board wipes now in the form of Ugin the Spirit Dragon and an All Is Dust. So we could attempt our commander here. I dare say that the Grixis player won't allow it to stick around for very long, so maybe Realm Breaker is the way to go. And then who do we target? Who's the least likely to make use of their graveyard? And who's the least likely to scoop on us? You know, go straight down the middle at the blue player. I think all 3 players in blue can make use of their graveyards, and if our opponent's running blood tokens, then it might be that he wants to put creatures in the bin to reanimate. We managed to get a land in the island, so ramping a little bit, which is the whole point of that spell, of course. Managed to see the back of a Baral there as well, which is noteworthy, so yeah, definitely seeing some counter magic in the God Eternal Kefnet's deck in that case. So there is the Time Warp from our opponent. That is one of the worst extra turns that you can see, or one of the best from our opinion, is when your opponents just use it as an Explore. And then we see Marquesa the Black Rose. It's, yeah, argument to be made for getting this down and then maybe Time Warping next turn and making use of some plus counter stuff. Throwing out a Wizard Glass as well. The Seagate Reborn means that our opponent's not looking to go for Seagate Restoration. Tapping out into the commander most likely means that we've got a few blue players to tap out at least. Maybe we just go for Ugin and exile a bunch of commanders here. Well, not the Olvika most likely. Won't mind seeing the back of that Goblin Bombardment though. Temple of Epiphany, our opponent getting into a land, but it is a tap land unfortunately. Scry's a powerful ability, but I don't think people really rate these cards, and I don't think Scry 1 is good enough to put on a tap land. I'd rather not lose the tempo on plays like this, where your opponent's desperate or you're desperate for another mana and you can't get it because it's a tap land. I don't think it's worth the trade-off of a Scry personally. Alright, so we can still see free counter magic, could still see an Arcane Denial or Mana Leak, something like that over here. Our opponents have lots of cards in hand. Or we could just continue to ramp. There is a Burnished Heart. I don't particularly mind that, to be honest. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then a couple of mana into the Realm Breaker is fine. Noteworthy that the Grixis player is holding up priority. The other two aren't, so might be that there's no counter magic there. Let's target this player as well. We have to spread the potential land ramp around a little bit. Reliquary Tower is nice because it's colourless, because we obviously have to play around the fact that our opponents could scoop on us at any point, and obviously players will be taken out at some point as well during the course of the game, so I want to hold on to as many of these lands as possible. But just one different type of land and we'll start ticking the Field of the Dead up then. So starting to make zombie tokens soon. Argument to be made for us waiting for that to happen and then we can go Burnished Heart and get a couple more zombies, but I think we'd rather just take the additional mana. Now a Treasure Nabber. So yeah, the Grixis player definitely looking to steal things away and then sacrifice them by the looks of it. And then Swiftfoot Boots into play after that. Don't think they have the mana to protect their Marquesa with it. I'm liking these blue players tapping out every turn though. And the 3-3 turns in sideways towards the right at Olvika. So putting a plus counter on that with Dethrone should help keep it in play. So now you may reveal the first card you draw each turn. As you draw it, and whenever you reveal an instant or sorcery this way, and it is a Deliberate, you can cast it and it costs 2 less, so just a 1 mana scry 2 then draw. And then we stand to go up to 8 points of Kefnet damage here. No deciding to go in at Olvika, so both players bullying the Olvika player who's struggling more than anyone. And then the blue player just holding up 6 mana with 8 cards in hand, so yeah, likely has crafted a nice one there. Probably has counter magic held up, so should run our commander into that as opposed to the Ugin, I imagine. Discarding a Bane Veil, a Hedron Archive from the Olvika player, so finally getting his mana going. Could have played that last turn, don't forget, but had a tap land. And now seeing a Mystical Tutor from the blue player. And whatever he reveals to us here will cost 2 less thanks to the Kefnet next turn, assuming that he's going to reveal it, which, why wouldn't he? So that is a copy spell. Irenicus's Val Duplication will only be 2, and it will make a token copy of the Kefnet, most likely. And then going for the original Deliberate, they got a copy of it previously, and now paying 2 mana for scry 2 and draw again. So that triggers the God Eternal Kefnet, because this is the first card that they've drawn. And going for the Val Duplication means potentially they're not holding up counter magic in all this. Yep, going for the duplication. So that's 2 God Eternal Kefnets in play. Alright, Olvika has disconnected and is having connection issues here, which meant that this player, about 5 seconds ago, decided to scoop because he got too impatient. So if he'd bothered to wait another 5 seconds, he would have seen that we are about to continue with the game here. And the blue player has tapped out for us, so yeah, we get to actually do something, hopefully. Alright, so that's an Eye of Ugin, making our Eldrazi cost 2 less. So if we go 2, 4, 6, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 again, means we can't go for Ugin. We will be able to go for All Is Dust though. So yeah, Eye of Ugin, actually a pretty damn good draw there. Zhulodok means that we can go for some Cascade here. So it's a 4 mana commander into a 5 mana All Is Dust. And we did lose a land thanks to the opponent going down there, which is what I was talking about previously, so can't go for the Realmbreaker activation like we should be able to. There's an Ugin's Mastery, which I haven't been able to play yet, so definitely get that going. And then a Skyclave Relic, which yeah, we can't go for the kicker on, I don't think. Yeah, no way we can go for the kicker on that, so just play it like that. And then this should blow up the God Eternal Kefnets, so our opponent is going to have 6 cards, but again, no commander. And our opponent's already cast the spell that he tutored for previously, otherwise we'd have been able to mess it up with the Realmbreaker, now that we've got into that additional mana, but I don't think it matters now. If our opponent puts Kefnet third from the top, which he has done, how many is this? Mill 3 cards, so we can put it in the bin, and that might mess up our opponent here. Alright, yeah, so our opponent scoops there. The Kefnet ends up in the bin, and maybe it was stuck there because our opponent didn't change the zones on it. I'm not sure how it works, but Inscription of Insight and River's Rebuke means that we didn't hit a land. Yeah, so some impatience there, unfortunately. We were drawing next turn into nothing according to the client, so hopefully we cascade into some stuff with Ugin, but against a blue player. Not that hopeful that our opponent won't counter it, but fortunately against those 3 blue players didn't see any counter magic whatsoever, so this is just going to be a little exhibition match, I think, and hopefully you'll see a real game now. Zhulodok versus Mishra, Surak and Gorklaw, and Meria. Yeah, we've got a decent number of lands, which... yeah, Urza Saga becomes 2 mana, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I'd actually just rather try and get into some ramp there, but as soon as we mulligan, we're not going to have any lands in hand. Yeah, there we go. Do we just have to go all in on the 1 ring here? Yeah, Liberator's decent as well, so yeah, let's try this. Getting down the 1 ring this early is definitely going to be the death of us, but it'll be a fun game. Alright, we draw into Skittering Cicada, which is not an artifact. We can get the Liberator down because it is, thanks to the Mishra's Workshop, so play that out at the end of Mishra's turn. And Mishra's Workshop over here as well, and that means a turn 1 Elf Replica for the Gruul player. Alright, so we are, during the Mishra player's turn here, we'll go for the Liberator. That means we'll be able to cast, is it colourless spells? Yeah, colourless spells and artifacts as though they had flash. So that means we can get down the 1 ring on our opponent's turn as well. There is a Metal Worker, maybe that's even better. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, no, 3 artifacts, means 6 mana from the Metal Worker, so that's probably a better idea to get that down. Don't want to hold on to the 1 ring for too long, but the sooner we get it down, the more deadly it's going to be to us as well. No coloured mana at all from the Meria player yet. Threw down a Nykthos, trying to Nyx this turn. And there is a Door of Destinies. So has obviously gone for some kind of Gruul elf deck here, which should be interesting. And then the 2-2 swings in towards the mono green player. Well, this is a fast moving game. The Mana Crypt comes out on turn 2 for the Surak player. Allows him into a 4 mana Beast Whisperer on turn 2. Sensei's Divining Top for the Grixis player. Played a couple of tap lands so far, so doesn't have the mana to spin the Sensei's Top. So we will go for the Metal Worker to get Summoning Sickness away from that, ready for our turn that's about to begin. Liberator gets a plus counter, thanks to it being 3 mana. Alright, well, we're getting into some good stuff here. A Thran Dynamo means even more mana from the Metal Worker, so if we don't reveal the Mithril Coat, so it's still a surprise, that is 6 mana into our commander. Then we can still go Thran Dynamo. Won't be able to hold up the 1 ring though, so maybe we do just show them the Mithril Coat. Don't suppose there's much point in doing it now though, because Liberator can give us flash on all of our spells, so yeah, pass at that. Seen the first coloured mana there, it does come in tapped, but it's at least indestructible. Looks like our opponent is just tapping out and passing over there. Got off to a reasonably fast start, but it's going to take a while to get down the elves apparently. And the 2-powered creature goes into the right. Alright, that is a Tempt with Discovery, which typically you want to say no to. Do we have any really good lands we can grab though? Yeah, I mean if we're going to be missing lands and the artifacts get wiped out at some point, yeah, the mono green player becoming a threat might actually be alright if he manages to ramp a bunch here. Yeah, this player took an Ancient Tomb as well. I imagine Mira will as well because he's struggling on lands, so that means we kind of have to say yes as well. But typically you always say no to these tempt cards because the player casting it gains way more advantage from it than you do. So there's Eye of Ugin, or Eldrazi Temple really. I think it will be the Eldrazi Temple. I think that does make a difference though. It does mean that we don't have to show the Mithril Coat. We can just show the 1 ring, Thran Dynamo, and this for 6 mana. And after that we'll have 3, 4 and 5 mana left over. 6, 7, 8 from this. So yeah, we'll work it all out when we come to cast it. Seeing a Yavimaya here means that the Mishra's Workshop can be used even when we don't get to cast artifacts with it. So that's relevant as well. Surak is the first creature being played into the Beast Whisperer. They've grabbed an Ancient Tomb. You would expect them to see a Gaia's Cradle as well. Over here is a Yavimaya Hallow also. And then the 2-3 moves into the left. Our opponents are going to have to be careful, swing it into us, because we do have flash, of course. An argument to be made for us going for Mind's Eye instead. If we can actually get into some lands to pour into that, because the 1 ring can protect us against a big attack from the Surak, maybe. Sensei's Top being spun at the end of the turn, which our opponent can now do thanks to being able to grab an Ancient Tomb. It's a Sol Ring for Mishra, followed by a Panharmonicon. This is all on turn 3, don't forget. And then holding up double blue here, so yeah, maybe we just try and go for our commander. I mean, if we've got a surplus of mana, then I don't think we particularly mind getting countered. So yeah, let's just reveal everything here. So we'll attempt to get down our Zhulodok. Another plus counter on the Liberator. And yeah, there's a mana drain, so we'll just get down the Thran Dynamo here, I think. Just for the sake of having some additional mana next turn. It taps for more mana than the Metal Worker will give us. Or an additional plus counter on the Liberator. So Zhulodok going back into the bin. And we have the 6 mana to worry about from Mana Drain next turn. Yeah, I don't think we need to cast anything else then. We at least got our opponent to use his Mana Drain on his own turn. There is a Rise of the Eldrazi, so yeah, casting that into our commander would be really good. This kind of encourages us to keep hold of these artifacts if we can, so that we can keep making a bunch of mana to the Metal Worker. So still get 6 mana there, we've got enough for the tax. Just try and get our commander into play again, I think. Holding back the 4/5 Liberator so that we don't have to take too much damage from a green player. And there's an Ancient Tomb over here as well, so everyone but us has the Ancient Tomb in play at this point. So Miria coming out and putting the first counter on the Door of Destinies. And now seeing a Priest of Titania, so yeah, starting to ramp even further ahead. We'll only start tapping for mana next turn though. And now the 4/4 going in at the Grixis player. Sol Ring for the mono green player as well. And a Lifecrafter's Bestiary for the green player will get them a scry, and they'll be able to draw some more cards when they cast a creature, which got a surplus of mana now thanks to that attempt with Discovery. So there we see Karametra's Acolyte. Draw to the Beast Whisperer, potentially to the Bestiary as well. And they do put the mana into that. So that is going to gain haste until the end of the turn, which isn't particularly useful for combat, but it's a mana dork that's going to tap for a decent chunk of mana. Played a land, so down to 4 cards in hand. Tapping this thing down for 5 mana. Okay, and there's a Vorinclex Voice of Hunger. Superb. So, tapping down our lands now before the blue player untaps isn't the worst thing anyway. Draw a card to the Beast Whisperer. And we need to decide what we want to do exactly here. Let's go on Metal Worker. We can untap the same artifacts again. Or reveal the same artifacts again. And then Metal Worker untaps next turn. If we play the One Ring here, or maybe it's better to just go Mind's Eye, but the One Ring will give us protection from stuff. Or do we just go Mithril Coat? I'm wondering if to actually just play a bunch of artifacts out so that we don't have as much mana to the Metal Worker. Yeah, we do need to start actually drawing into some lands at some point here, unfortunately. So, yeah, let's go Mithril Coat. And our lands will untap because the Vorinclex hasn't hit play yet. It's more likely Grixis will have Destruction Magic as opposed to Exile, so hopefully the Eldrazi will stay in play here. And then we'll give ourselves protection from everything with the One Ring. So our opponent can swing in towards us if he wants to, but it won't deal any damage. And then it's an Emerald Medallion after that, still at 4 cards in hand over there. So if we go for 2 mana, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. We're nowhere near Rise of the Eldrazi. We could get 10 mana if we draw into an artifact. And then 11 if we get into a land as well. So yeah, might be able to go for Rise of the Eldrazi into our commander. There's that mana drain mana from countering the Zhulodok all that while ago. So there we see a Spine of Issar. They can still blow up our stuff. It might be that they go for the Liberator. Now that they've seen a couple of artifacts from the Metal Worker being played, they know that we've got the Mind's Eye. That does trigger twice as well, so they actually get 2 permanents. Yeah, Vorinclex should definitely go down. So no one having to put any lands to sleep here. And yeah, it's the Liberator that goes down. So luckily we've still got the Skittering Cicada. Draw a card to the One Ring. And alright, there's a Basalt Monolith, which could be infinite mana with the right card. Have to let the Battle Thopter go down though. And then the Avamaya Hollow. Yeah, our opponent, I forgot about that as well actually, going to regenerate the Vorinclex. Does mean that it opens them up to some other kind of destruction magic though. So yeah, could have pointed both of the Spinovish Tsars there because it would have removed the regeneration shield on the first one. Our opponent's still having to tap lands into this now, as will we. So tapping down a lot of his lands to get down Mishra Eminent One. Alright, so targeting the Spinovish Tsar to make a token copy of it. They go after our Metal Worker and surely, yeah, the Vorinclex. So had to put their lands to sleep at least, but I think getting rid of the Vorinclex and our Metal Worker is a decent trade there. Does mean that we lose a hell of a lot of mana, unfortunately. And we've got the Spinovish Tsar to worry about every single turn. Right, so we take the first life from the One Ring. Got one bird encounter, so we go down by one. And there's Unstable Obelisk. Yeah, still not getting into the lands, amazingly. Oh wow, really? You blow up a load of stuff and then bounce. Well, that's going to have to eat a ban, I'm afraid. Alright, so during the main phase, let's go for drawing a couple of cards with the One Ring. Finally getting into another land in Makokoro. And Forsaken Monument's decent, so we can go for Skittering Cicada, and the Forsaken Monument is going for the Forsaken Monument now, more worthwhile. Actually, that's infinite mana with the Basalt Monolith, isn't it, now that I'm thinking about it, so yeah, we just do this on our opponent's turn, I think, because that way we don't have to have all these things in play during our opponent's turns. We can play them at the end of this turn and dodge any kind of green artifact destruction. Lysolana Huntmaster gonna make a bunch of elf tokens, which is obviously good for generating mana. And the Priest of Titania will now be tapping for mana as well, 4 cards in hand over there. And there is a Doors of Durin. Whenever you attack, scry 2, and you can reveal the top card. If it's a creature, put it onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Don't see that one quite enough, but it is a really good Gruul card. Then the Lothlorien Blade coming into play. It will equip to an elf for 2 mana. Throwing that onto the commander. And playing another elf, so that will buff the commander and means that it can throw more damage around with the blade. And also makes another elf. Right, so the commander now a 7/7. Luckily our commander is indestructible thanks to the Mithril coat, so not sure where they're going to swing in here. Yeah, going in at this player so that he can actually blow up some of his stuff. Doors of Durin gets a scry. And, oh wow, that's enough to have the mono green player scoop as well. The first sign of adversity, and these players just bounce. This is, I joined someone else's game here, by the way, and it's meant to be a power level 8 game. And, yeah, apparently they didn't know that they were joining power level 8 games for some reason. Alright, so into play now off the Doors of Durin, a Reclamation Sage pointed at the indestructible Mithril coat. That's fine with me, it means that we don't lose our Thran Dynamo. And we'll just block with our indestructible creature, the Reclamation Sage. Means that there's one less elf to worry about. So unfortunately, I think we're about to see another player scoop here, because we'll be able to set up some infinite mana, but let's go for it anyway. The Skittering Cicada, another means of us playing our colourless spells at instant speed. And we'll go for the Forsaken Monument here, just because it costs more mana. That gives the Skittering Cicada a buff, which isn't actually relevant here. It might be next turn, though. That jumps up to a 7/7, or a 9/9 even. So nothing to do with the 2 mana. We will go through to our actual turn now. And I was worried about taking a bunch of damage to the One Ring, but the games are so fast now, especially in these high power ones, that yeah, we're actually not going to take too much damage at all to this. There's an Eye of Ugin, which can tap for mana thanks to the Avamaya. Can't tap for colourless, though. We'll make the Kozilek cheaper. So we tap the One Ring, put a 3rd bird encounter on it, and draw 3 cards. Alright, excellent. An Unwinding Clock is awesome. Wayfarer's Bauble and a Liquimetal Torque. Let's go for infinite mana with the Basalt Monolith. Or do we just see if our opponent feels as though he can do anything to us here? Yeah, we can do all this during our opponent's turn. So that is an Elven Chorus. Looking at the top card, you can play creature cards and all your creatures are dorks. And then exiling the top card with Myria. Might be able to play it this turn, but he's looking for creatures on top, so that suggests that he's exiled a non-creature spell. And there's a land, 1 card in hand. Llanowar Elves off the top makes more Door of Destiny triggers and a Lysolana Huntmaster token. Suppose last turn we could have cast all this stuff on our turn just to buff the Cicada and swing straight over. A Quirion Elves. They don't have any reachers yet. There aren't that many elves that people play that have reach. exiling the top card with Myria again, followed by Well-Wisher to get some more triggers. Our opponent doing all this during the main phase. He's still going to have mana from the creatures, like Wirewood Channeler will tap for a lot, and he's got the Nykthos available still as well. But if he's just trying to go for a Craterhoof Behemoth effect, then maybe we just have to pull the trigger now. Try and get rid of this thing the next time he exiles the top card. Right, there's a Volcanic Torrent. 5 spells cast here, and it's a Cascade. Deals X damage to each creature and Planeswalker. Your opponent's control, where X is the number of spells you've cast this turn. So that's 5. So that's a one-sided board wipe, unless we can go for the Skittering Cicada and buff it enough to survive this, which we should be able to. And then there is a Windswift Slice. Target creature deals damage equal to its power, and you get that many Elf Warrior tokens. So that's going to be 8 damage from this thing, which we can have it survive. So let's go for the Basalt Monolith and start making some extra mana. Our opponent can't play spells at flash speed, so we should take the opportunity to get rid of this thing as well before they Craterhoof Behemoth on us. So Colourless Spell gains us 2 life from the Forsaken Monument, and we get a buff on the Skittering Cicada to survive these 2 spells as well. So the way this works with the Forsaken Monument, we get an additional colourless mana on the Basalt Monolith, so tap it for 4 mana, and then it untaps for 3. So obviously we gain a mana every time we do that, and hopefully our opponent sticks this out. Play ourselves a Wayfarer's Bauble with the mana as well. So that's more life and Skittering Cicada gaining another small buff. We'll go at Liquimetal Torque as well. So now the Cicada is a 10/10, and it will survive against the 8/8, so doesn't have Death Touch or anything, does it? No, I think we just let that Windswift Slice resolve first. And there'll obviously be no excess damage dealt here because they can't get through our toughness. So they've just paid to kill off their own creature there. We've got 8 markers on this, and this is going to be, 6 damage now. So now we'll cast the Unstable Obelisk, gain 2 life and +3 onto the Cicada. And we'll cast the Unwinding Clock simply to buff this thing up enough to survive the Volcanic Torrent. And then I'm thinking I'm going to be sacrificing the Unstable Obelisk to get rid of the enchantment here, which our opponent should probably foresee. So I've tapped down a waste as well just to speed things up, and that is 7 mana to destroy the Elven Chorus. So hopefully there shouldn't be any surprises here while our opponent doesn't have any cards in hand. Managed to have all our creatures survive thanks to the buff and the indestructibility. Our opponent tapping mana into the Nykthos. Still got infinite mana held up. Let our opponent pass through with no mana. And now we're in a pretty commanding position here, I think. So we'll go through to the end step and start making some mana again. So making sure the Basalt Monolith is untapped, we will go for some generic mana into Eldrazi as well. Let's cast ourselves a Kozilek, Butcher of Truth. Alright, and our opponent deciding as soon as they saw the Eldrazi mana. Yeah, Eldrazi putting the fear of God in people as usual. The Kozilek, Butcher of Truth was going to come down and draw us some cards. Not sure if the client will show us. Alright, Rings of Brighthearth is infinite mana with the Basalt Monolith as well. Could have tutored with the Conduit of Ruin, and we would have got an Eldrazi with the Eye of Ugin as well. Drew into Desecrate Reality, so could have blown up something relevant with that as well. So yeah, we would have had a couple of Eldrazi available to us, and then this is before we've even cast Rise of the Eldrazi. So that would have been an additional turn. Would have got some Annihilator 4s into play, so probably Kozilek and Ulamog. So that would have been 8 permanents that would have had to have been exiled by our opponent, or sacrificed. And they could have got rid of a few tokens at first, but after that they would have had to get rid of some really relevant things. So yeah, it's a bit of a pain doing the Basalt Monolith combo on Magic Online, but if you play this in paper you can just make a billion mana and then do everything that you want in real time reasonably quickly. Yeah, pretty much a case of getting the big Eldrazi down and then annihilating everything over the next turn or two there. So hopefully you all enjoyed that revisit to Zhulodok. Apologies for the early scoops, but we got to see some good Eldrazi action there, or got to imagine it anyway. Massive thank you to the patrons for supporting as ever. I'm Tribalkai. Thank you for watching.